In this movie, we're going to take a look at one of my favorite secondary operations, tracking a face. If you've got a good tracker, tracking faces can really lift your craft to new levels as it helps you isolate what is quite literally the most important aspect of any shot, or at least any shot that isn't a product for a commercial. And when I think about the various trackers I've used over my career, I'd say the SpeedGrade tracker is, on average, just about average. And you'll see why in a moment. First, let's load up exercise file 0503 DS End. This is where we left off last on this sequence here in death scenes. And I'm going to continue to work on this first shot here, where I really want to pull out his eyes. I'll double-click on this clip, and that places the in and out points on it, and I'll hit play for some looping action. And I'll also press A to hide the analysis tools for now. And let's watch his eyes. And notice as this clip plays down, you can see first his eyes slope downward to screen right, then his head tilts the other way, and they slope downward in the other direction towards screen left. Now, as it turns out, when his head rotates, this is going to be a bit of a challenge for SpeedGrade, and I'll prove it to you right now. So first, we need to add a primary to which we're going to attach this shape and do whatever grade we're going to do on the inside of it. Now I'll come up to the mask menu and I'll select the feathered oval preset. Let's jump to the first frame of this shot and do what I would normally do, which is rotate this mask to match the direction of his eyes. And then I'm going to hit track. It took SpeedGrade about a minute to track this shot, which is a bit longer than I'd prefer for a 7-second shot. Now, watch what happens to this mask as I play it down. It matches the left, right, up, down movements of his head, but as his head rotates, no rotation gets applied to this mask. In other words, SpeedGrade's tracker, it only tracks XY coordinates, not rotation. And since the tracker is using up these keyframes, I can't just keyframe an overall rotation. I mean, if I wanted to do that, I have to go keyframe by keyframe, which won't be organic. It's tedious, and if I have hundreds of shots to color grade, there's no way I can allocate my time to that kind of frame-by-frame roto work. I can probably get away with finding an average position for this mask and not worry about the rotation of his head. So let's delete all these keyframes. Then I'll jump to the out point, and I'm going to reposition this shape. I'll make it a little larger than I would otherwise. I want it to catch his eyes, hopefully with his head tilted both ways. So it'll be a little larger than I normally would. I'll do a quick grade to see if this will work. And first I'll set this as an outside, because one way I'll make his eyes more intense is to push back the rest of the image. I'll take a little out of the overall gamma and the overall gain. I'll turn that layer on and off. Already I focused a little bit more on his eyes, but I do want him to be a little more insightful. So I'll add another primary layer. I'll link it to the layer below. Set this to an inside correction. And again, in SpeedGrade, the 12-way color corrector, this is only available by adding a primary layer. But because we've got this mask enabled, as a colorist, we're isolating a portion of the image and performing now a secondary operation using a primary layer. So now I'm going to come into the shadow, and I think I'll lift up the shadow gamma, and the blacks are starting to wash out. So I'll drop the shadow offset. And let me open up my analysis tools. I want to see if I'm clipping out any detail here in the shadows. I think I'm also going to kick up the gain in the shadows just to get me a little more contrast in the darker areas of this image. All right, let's hide the grading panel to get a better look at this as well. Let's also hide the analysis tools. I'm turning on and off this inside mask. Yeah, I like that. It's not a lot, but I don't think it needs a lot. And now, if we select the layer below these two linked layers, and press this button, we can see the before and after. Yeah, I like. Now, let's see if this mask shape will work with the first frame. So I'll jump to the in point. And I can select either the third or fourth layer to adjust this mask. Yeah, the general shape seems to work. All right, so now let's track. Great, let's see if this worked. Yeah, I'm happy. On this shot, even though the mask isn't rotating, it's a nice compromise, and keeping the mask a little large and relatively soft, I think that helps hide the fact that it's a bigger mask than I'd prefer. Now, the last thing is in the shadows here under his eye, I think it might be going a bit magenta. So let's come into the shadows and take this magenta slider and pull away from magenta. That's feeling much better to me. Let's go full screen and see how this works. Yeah, I'm catching a little bit of the edge of the mask up here. Nothing that I can't fix with just a quick tweak of the shape. Otherwise, it's looking pretty good. This is what the shot looked like before we started grading. Now, after both primary and secondary color correction, here's what we've got. We absolutely increased the contrast. We've increased the perceived sharpness of the image. Can you see that? And really as well, we've really zoomed in and now we're focused in on his eyes. This is now the center of attention on this shot. I did have to fight the tracker a bit with its lack of rotation. And the tracker is a little slow, but I'll tell you what I think. With a little bit of pre-thought coming in here to isolate and track faces, here in SpeedGrade, definitely doable.